Okay, let's dive right into a pretty incredible story. It's about one homeowner's battle against what his own court filings call a foreclosure machine. In this case, wow, it really pulls back the curtain on the complex and often pretty brutal world of mortgage defaults. But you see, getting evicted wasn't the end of the fight for him, not even close. For this homeowner, it was actually just the beginning of a massive appeal to the state's highest court, an appeal that frankly challenges the entire foundation of the foreclosure that took his home in the first place. And here you have it, straight from the homeowner himself, Jeremy Bass. His argument is simple but powerful. He's saying, look, the very fact that I'm fighting this hard for this long is all the proof you need that I never intended to just walk away from my property. You just don't go through years of this for a home you don't care about. And that is the million-dollar question we are going to dig into. We're going to look at some pretty serious claims. We're talking forged documents, a rigged auction, and a legal system that one side says is completely failing to protect people. So yeah, this is about way more than just one house. It's about a single fight that could put the whole system on trial. All right, so first things first. To really get what's going on here, you've got to understand the powerful network on the other side of this battle. This isn't just one company we're talking about. It's a whole web of interconnected players. And look at this lineup. You can see how specialized it is. You've got the huge bank, Bank of America, and then a specialized servicer, Carrington, that's known for handling defaulted loans. Then there's a multi-state law firm that only represents creditors. And finally, venture capital firms that swoop in to buy the foreclosed properties. It's a well-oiled machine, for sure. Okay, quick sidebar, because this is super important context. We got to talk about robo-signing. This term became, well, infamous after the 2008 financial crisis. It's basically the practice of signing thousands and thousands of foreclosure documents without checking if any of the information is actually correct. This history is crucial, as it really sets the stage for the fraud claims we're about to get into. So you're up against this machine, right? What do you do? Well, what's so fascinating here is that the homeowner, Jeremy Bass, he didn't just read around to react. Nope. He had apparently engineered a legal defense years in advance, and he embedded it right into his tenant's lease agreement. Check this out. It's like a tale of two leases. A normal lease gives a tenant almost no protection if the house gets foreclosed on. But Bass's lease? This thing was a legal trap. It had a clause that made any new owner bound by every single term. And, get this, an incredibly painful buyout clause that would force them to pay out the entire remaining value of the lease just to get the tenant out. And you know who noticed? Legal experts. This housing rights attorney points out that Bass brilliantly wove together contract law and federal tenant protections. And the result was what she calls a double binding mechanism, which is just a fancy way of saying he built a massive wall that would be incredibly difficult for anyone to tear down. So Bass had his defense ready, this legal fortress. But his case on appeal, it's all about going on the attack. The entire thing centers on the idea that the foreclosure itself was totally illegitimate, built on years of what he claims was misconduct by the mortgage servicer, Carrington. Now, this timeline is absolutely crucial to understanding his argument. Bass got a COVID-19 forbearance, but his court documents allege that the servicer, Carrington, just kept extending it, way beyond the legal 18-month limit. Why would they do that? Well, Bass argues it was a deliberate strategy to let a huge debt pile up, making it impossible for him to ever catch up before they slammed him with an outrageous demand. And here's that demands they hit him with. According to the case filings, it was basically designed to be rejected. First, it included what he claims was an illegal fee. Second, it reset his loan, which was almost paid off, all the way back to a new 30-year term. And the kicker? It was delivered as a non-negotiable take-it-or-leave-it ultimatum, which experts say is a major violation of federal rules. But hold on, because the allegations go even deeper. Bass claims that Carrington actually tried to bribe him with $100 to sign backdated loan documents. And then, the bombshell. He alleges that the original deed of trust, the key document used to foreclose, contains a forged signature. Now think about that. If that's true, the entire legal basis for the foreclosure just evaporates. So you've got all these serious questions about the paperwork, right? Well, the whole thing then moves to the courthouse steps for a foreclosure auction. But as Bass alleges, this critical part of the process was also a sham. Now, the law is super clear about what a public auction is supposed to be. It has to be genuinely open to the public. The rules have to be the same for everybody. There can't be any backroom deals or prearranged winners. It's got to be fair. And this is where the story takes another wild turn. According to Bass's filings, which he says includes video evidence, there was only one single bidder at this public auction. And get this, that bidder was seen on the phone, apparently coordinating directly with the auctioneer before the sale even started. Bass says this wasn't an auction at all. It was a prearranged handover of his property. So what does all this mean legally? Well, it leads to a huge argument. Bass is claiming that if that auction was rigged, then the sale is what's called void ab initio. It's a fancy Latin phrase, but it basically means it's null. It's like it never ever happened in the eyes of the law. So with all this on the table, you'd think he'd have a pretty strong case, right? Well, he lost in the lower court. The judge ruled against him, which sets up the final, high-stakes chapter of this whole story, the appeal. You're probably asking, how in the world did he lose? Well, according to the appeal, it's because the district court made a game-changing decision. It basically put on blinders, refusing to consider any of the evidence of fraud, forgery, or auction rigging. They framed the whole thing as just a simple eviction, which effectively silenced the core of his defense. And this is what makes the appeal so much bigger than just one house. Bass is asking the Idaho Supreme Court to answer some really fundamental questions about the justice system itself. Like, can courts use procedural rules to rubber stamp fraud? Can a person really lose their home not because of the facts, but just because they can't master the complex legal jargon? So now it's all in the hands of the Idaho Supreme Court, and they have a huge choice to make. They can either treat this like any other routine property dispute, or they can decide to confront the massive, systemic issues that this case has dragged out into the open. So as we wrap this up, it really all boils down to one question. Is this just the story of one incredibly persistent guy fighting against insane odds for what he believes is his? Or is this a giant red flag, a warning about some really deep, unsettling cracks in the very legal foundation that's supposed to protect our most fundamental property right of all, a person's home? The answer to that question now rests with the Idaho Supreme Court.